Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that invites you into discussions taking place in your community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, the Dean and Academic Vice President of the college, Michael Marsden.
Good evening, my name is Michael Marsden, and I'm your host for this edition of Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our very special guest this evening is Bishop Robert Morneau, or Bishop Bob as he's affectionately known throughout the diocese. Bishop Morneau is the pastor at Resurrection Parish in Allouez, Wisconsin. He's also a teacher, author, and spiritual director, as well as serving as the auxiliary bishop for the Diocese of Green Bay. He writes a regular column for Green Bay's diocesan newspaper, The Compass, and has also authored many books dealing with spirituality, prayer, and also poetry. And he regularly is invited to speak on these topics throughout the country. Additionally, Bishop Morneau has been a member of the St. Norbert College Board of Trustees since 1980. Our topic this evening is the recently released document entitled Forming Consciences for the Faithful Citizenship, a call to political responsibility from the Catholic bishops of the United States. So, Bishop Morneau, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here.
Very pleased to have you.
Thank you.
And this particular document, I wanted to ask you about it. Why did the Conference of Catholic Bishops decide to bring out this revision of this document at this time?
Well, every major political election, every 4 years for the presidency, we try to update the document, helping our people to form their conscience, to be informed, to know what their obligations are as citizens. So it's a revision, not a major revision, but it's a way of helping our people to be good citizens.
What are the differences between the earlier versions and this version?
Well, they do update the political issues, the war issue of Iraq and other political issues, but basically the principles and the Catholic social teaching section is identical, but some different political issues arise, so they have to address those.
So more contemporary.
More exactly.
Now, the document makes it pretty clear that it's important for Catholics to really consider their faith issues as they look at candidates, as they look at issues.
Right.
And this is pretty important in the next couple of months ahead of us here in terms of local elections as well as national elections. So why is that important? How is that at the heart of Catholicism?
Well, I think what has happened, I know when I was growing up, religion and faith tend to be compartmentalized. So Sunday morning, you did your religion. Then on Tuesday, you voted, which is separate. On Wednesday, you did some economic decisions. On Friday night, you did some cultural affairs. So there's a tendency for faith to be put into one corner, and then the political, economic, cultural, and social areas were different. And so what we're trying to do is to help our people to have a holistic faith approach. So how does my faith, my belief in Jesus, creation, redemption, sanctification, how does it impact on all the other areas of life?
So it permeates all of life.
Permeates and influences. So when I make decisions in those other areas, I want to see that through the eyes of faith and help the gospel values to inform those decisions. But there is a tendency to isolate our faith and put it in the corner, and then the other parts of life are out there.
Interesting point. There are a couple of quotes from the document that just really struck me. This is one of them, and I want to just read it if I can. It reads on page 4 of the document, in the Catholic tradition, responsible citizenship is a virtue, and participation in political life is a moral obligation. That, to me, is a pretty strong mandate. How widely understood is that as a mandate?
I don't think it's really widely understood. We have to really help our people and ourselves as leaders to realize that we do have a serious commitment to make the world a better place and to foster the common good. In the political arena, as its purpose, the common good. The church is about the kingdom. And the kingdom of God, for me, is 4 little quadrants. It's about truth, charity, freedom, and justice. So to build the kingdom of God, we say, thy kingdom come. We as faith people are mandated to be involved in the common good. So we have a moral obligation, a duty to participate in the political process, helping form policies, values, and important decisions. So I kind of use that kingdom model, but a lot of people think, again, that faith is about eschatology, the end time, and this world is just passing, and therefore we don't have to be involved. But we have a moral obligation, a serious duty to participate in the process.
Yeah, that's
to offer our voice and our vote.
So
the voice matters, and the voice counts.
We can't be passive.
We can't be passive.
That's interesting. Now, how do you balance, though, the traditional American separation of church and state, from this kind of a mandate?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
It depends on how you understand church. If the church is the people of God, then that separation, so every person who is baptized in our Christian belief and our Catholic belief is a citizen and therefore has to participate. But I think what has happened is people think it's a divorce between church and state,
right,
and not a separation. Right. And so the state should allow religious liberty and cannot take on any particular church as its official church. So it has to be removed. But each of those domains, the church and the state, has autonomy, but it doesn't mean that they should not interact and be in serious dialogue on any matters that involve human dignity.
Mm-hmm. And that's a requirement.
Yeah.
Related to that, another strong statement I found in the document, this is a little earlier in the document, but it says, the church's obligation to participate in shaping the moral character of society is a requirement of our faith. I mean, it's not an option, it's a requirement. I mean, that seems to be a pretty strong statement, almost a calling for social action.
It does.
And that you can't get away from it.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so if you preach the gospel, that part of the proclamation of the gospel is to do the work of justice and therefore to change society. And so Matthew chapter 25, when I was hungry and naked and thirsty, what did you do? So the gospel mandates us to social action, to be involved in the community in a serious way. Case in point would be our homeless shelter here in Green Bay.
Right.
And should the church be involved in that or not? So the city has ordinances, and the church there and the community, the Christian community, kind of we're in dialogue and sometimes a tension with the with
quite
the community.
A bit of tension there.
Yeah. So should the church have not been involved in social action, and we cannot not be involved. We have to reach out to those who are suffering. If they're not being cared for, we have to be involved in that.
Find a way to.
I want to share a quote with you, if I may.
Of course you may.
C.S. Lewis has the Screwtape Letters, which
I've read a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a book it's a senior devil, Screwtape, writing to his nephew Wormwood. Wow. So all the letters are about the devils, how they can get into our minds and hearts. So he writes, this is Screwtape, the devil, senior devil writing. Certainly, we do not want men, women, to allow their Christianity to flow over into the political life. We don't want that. For the establishment of anything like a real just society would be a major disaster. So here's the devil saying, don't let those people get involved in political issues. There'd be a major disaster to have a real just society. So I love that quote.
Yeah, that is a good quote. Yeah. That's true. If you're not part of the solution, you're going to be part of the problem.
Right.
Now, the discussion, though, about sometimes within the Catholic Church, but certainly within the secular world, often comes down to single issues. And that seems to me to be one of the big problems, is that too many people focus on a single issue and will weigh a candidate, will weigh a party, will weigh an election on the basis of a single issue. Now, I understand that some issues are more important than others, but how do you navigate those political waters without falling into the trap of the single issue camp, which is, to me, a trap?
Yeah. Well, in our Catholic social teaching, we have 7 basic principles, the first being the dignity of the human person. So if we can help our people to understand that wherever the dignity of the human person is violated or threatened, we have to be concerned about that. So to take a single issue would be kind of not in violation, but certainly not a holistic approach to Catholic social teaching. And we have been trying through Cardinal Bernardine to talk about the seamless garment. And so all of life issues are important. Sometimes some are more urgent and demand more attention, but to isolate that to a single issue with a single candidate can be unfair. And so we need to broaden our perspective and say, how does that candidate address other major issues that affect the common good?
That's a good point. One of the things that I'd like to explore with you a little bit is, if you look at these mandates from the document pretty carefully, it would suggest that certainly it is appropriate and sometimes necessary for Catholics to run for political office too.
Right.
But yet, when they do run for political office, they seem to run up against buzzsaws from both sides, from within the church and from outside the church.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, from your vantage point, is the church really friendly to candidates? I mean, I looked at Senator Kerry's race and others, and I thought, holy smokes! I mean, he's getting attacked from all sides, and he's not Catholic enough, or he's too Catholic, or whatever. And I'm just wondering, has the church worked at trying to provide what I would consider to be a friendly, welcoming environment for candidates who are Catholic?
Yeah. Well, I think any candidate who enters political office is going to face some opposition from both within the church and out. And I think the institutional church has to be much more friendly towards that and to encourage people and support them when we can. And there has been some pretty vigorous attacks and aggressive attacks on people, and that does, I think, keep some people out of the political arena. So I think we have to be much more sensitive and more open, and yet not back down on principles and challenge people that would violate what we consider to be a major principle, and yet to understand where they're coming from and the fact that they're identified with a political party, that they're going to have to be some tension there. Yeah. But you're true. I think that we have to be very, very much more sensitive. And
I think just as a case in point, I mean, we opened ourselves here at the college to all political candidates, as you probably know, and we had Michelle Obama here and Hillary Clinton within a week of each other this past winter, and we received enormous criticism, from within the church, not from outside the church, within the church. And I thought to myself, that's very strange, Again, I took them to be single-issue people, but at the same time, I said to myself, wait a minute, if we want to become engaged in the political process, that means we have to allow candidates to present their points of view.
Did you also receive some support for that from?
Very few.
Very few support.
Very few.
Okay. The more the critics.
The most we heard from, and I would defer to former President Hines, but I think the vast majority of them were negative. Particularly about Hillary Clinton and her visit. Even though I don't think Obama's position, for example, on some issues are all that different from hers. Anyway, I bring it up because I think it's that complexity of the world. The other related issue, and this is a tougher one, I think. I'm sort of interested in your take on the church's position that clergy should not be in political office, because I think we have our own Father Cornell from the Norbertines who served in Congress several terms. I think when he was in Congress, he was also a Jesuit. And although there were mixed signals, it wasn't. I would agree there were mixed signals coming from the Vatican. It would appeared that the position was they shouldn't be in political office.
Right.
What is the church's position?
Well, the priest is basically to proclaim the gospel. He's to celebrate the sacraments, to provide pastoral care for people. So that's what priesthood is all about. The fact that a priest would focus his attention on the political arena doesn't kind of fit into the theology of priesthood as such. Not that he should not be concerned and involved in certain ways, but to run for political office. I think, for me, one of the problems is if a person is identified as a strong Democrat or Republican, gets up on Sunday to preach, then half the congregation there say, he's going to lose some credibility for me because he's a Republican that holds this or a Democrat that holds this. And so to identify with an ideology is really problematic. I don't know if you saw, and I brought along here a little article from America this week. I read it last night, August 18th to 25th. And there's an article here about the Paraguay bishop. The Vatican has laicized a bishop who has been elected president of Paraguay. This allows him to take office in August without violating church law, said the papal nuncio in Paraguay. The Pope has granted him the loss of his clerical status. He's a layman now, said Archbishop Orlando Antonini, the papal nuncio. Fernando Lugo, who became known as the Bishop of the Poor, was elected president on April 20th after campaigning against corruption and for greater equality for the country's indigenous people and poor peasant farmers. When Lago takes office August 15th, he will end the more than 60-year rule of the Colorado Party. This is the first case within the church in which a bishop receives the dispensation, said Archbishop Antonini. Yes, there have been many other priests the Pope has left in the status of layman, but never a member of the hierarchy until today.
Interesting.
So that's really, I find very interesting.
That is fascinating. That's fascinating.
Because once and even Aristide down in Haiti, he was a priest, and then he became president of the country too. So he was laicized too. Yeah. So it's a very delicate thing, and if you the priests who do get involved in political run for office, they really feel if they want to bring about the kingdom, that's where the action is.
Sure.
Change society, change the policies and principles. And the power is there, so get in there and you can do the work of the church. So there is a little different philosophy between the priest politician and the church's position.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I want to remind everyone they're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our special guest this evening is Bishop Robert Morneau, and our topic is Catholic and political responsibilities in this election year particularly. There's another strong document statement that I wanted to just read if I could, because again, a couple of these really jumped out at me. This is on page 10. And it says, those who knowingly, willingly, or directly support public policies or legislation that undermine fundamental moral principles cooperate with evil. Now, my question for you is the political environment really that clearly defined?
Yeah.
You know, that you can say this is good and this is evil?
Yeah, and also to identify what does that mean to cooperate with evil, and at what level that means, formal cooperation, informal. It's a very, very complex issue. But if a person on a more definitive moral issue, abortion, participates in that we would see as a pretty direct violation of our principles, and a participation as an abortionist or somebody who would be active in that area. So, but in other areas, it's more confusing and the line is less clear.
Yes, and that's why I was wondering about that, because it seems to me that if the world was really that clear, it'd be a wonderful thing. But it often is grayish.
I was reading this morning an article by Gerald O'Connell's, and he talked about evil as rupture of relationships, loss, death, loss, and ignorance and disbelief. It's kind of interesting. And then those are the evils that plague the human condition. And what involvement do we have in that? We're all involved in that in some way.
Absolutely.
And so
day to day.
Yeah, day to day. And so how do we deal with that?
Yeah, interesting. Now, not surprisingly, there's a huge emphasis in the document on right to life and the dignity of the human person. But the Church's teachings really should be expanded to a whole range of other related issues. I mean, life doesn't just start and end at birth, obviously. But you've got euthanasia, you've got stem cell research issues, you've got euthanasia issues for the elderly, etc., and also capital punishment. And I'm sort of surprised the document doesn't really focus a little bit more on some of those other issues to give the broader picture. Again, I'm not being overly critical of the document, but I was wondering why it didn't. The Church was late in coming to the issue of capital punishment, in my judgment. And so now's the opportunity, it seems to be, to show the whole spectrum of related issues.
And I think we're beginning to broaden our perspective. I think the reason why the emphasis has been on abortion so much is we talk about millions of people.
Yes.
Millions of people. Death penalty, one is terrible, but you're talking about a limited number. We talk about millions of people who get into the culture of violence. I think the Church has to be very aggressive in that. But also, you're right, and other documents do deal with the other issues in a variety of ways. This document is more limited, but it does highlight the right to life.
That may
issue.
be something that the next edition of the document could consider.
Expanding
something they could take a look at.
Exactly.
One of the things I really was surprised at, though, given the fact that, from a moral perspective at least, the Iraq War was a preemptive war. And in the case of the American experience, probably the first preemptive war that we became involved in. And I was sort of surprised the document didn't really go out after that one. I mean, why were they so shy? Granted, your earlier argument about why a member of the clergy, member of one party or the other would automatically alienate people. 80% of the American public is opposed to the war. But why is that? Why are they shying away from that?
Well, I think, in terms of when that began and the information we have or were given or what the President said he had or was given was very complex and confusing, I think another reason is that, thousands of people have sons and daughters over there. And so how do you criticize the military of the war and not criticize all that? But you get a point there, and it's a delicate line, and the Church the Holy Father has spoken out against the war.
The Pope has,
indeed. The Pope has, but the document has not addressed it in a vigorous way.
Yeah. And I would hope that in the future the Church would speak out more clearly. I mean, to me, we are talking in that case about a lot of people and a lot of people's lives, a lot of death.
And I think too, in our country in slavery, in terms of when that was happening back in the 1860s or before that, before the emancipation, how aggressive was the church in speaking out against that? And we were born in the South, and that's part of your way of life, and all of a sudden the church becomes real aggressive. And so those are very, it's good, it's nice to be Monday morning quarterbacks, but when you're in there, it used to be pretty tough.
Well, but we do hope that places like St. Norbert College are places where the church can do its thinking.
Yeah, that's right. and the prophetic voice, too. Yeah. And within the church, there are prophetic voices that really speak out very strongly.
And they do, and that's a good thing. Yeah. Now, the document has a list of all kinds of social issues. I'm just going to go over a couple of them that I jotted down. Family life, just wages, welfare, affordable health care, housing, hunger, poverty, education, discrimination, immigration. That's just a few of them. Which, in your judgment, are the ones the church needs to attack or focus on more directly right now?
I would say, for me, that the poverty, hunger issues are really urgent in terms of 30,000 children dying every day in our planet. So those are immediate, pressing issues. But I would say even deeper than that, even more urgent would be family life. That if the family is not supported and protected, the whole culture falls apart. So I think we really have to try to help to support parents with all kinds of, and the children with education. But poverty and hunger would kind of be the most immediate. Family life would be even deeper than that. And then just the dignity of the human person, and to look at we're in a culture of great violence, and it's getting worse and worse. And television and movies and pornography, it's a violent world out there. And how do we bring reverence and respect to all of life? I would say it's really urgent.
Do you think some of this is localized? In other words, would you look at the Green Bay Diocese and say, within this diocese, these are the 2, 3, 4 top issues? Would you do that?
I think we're really struggling here in northeast Wisconsin with immigration and discrimination of different classes of people. I think that's a real pressing issue. I think the society is trying to address that here somewhat, but I would say that's a real pressing issue, is how to be a hospital welcoming community.
Yeah, I would think that would be an important issue right now, given our diversity in this region, which is growing
very much,
and something we ought to be paying attention to.
Yep.
Another section of the document doesn't just ask us, directs us to raise questions about the progress that a candidate might be making towards key moral issues as we evaluate their past performance as candidates, and then try to project out what they're going to be like as future candidates in a new position, or maybe even just be reelected to the same position. So I guess my question is, if you look at the overall climate in this country, do you think we're making any progress on moral issues over the last 4 to 8, 12 years?
I think we're making a lot of progress in the science area, technology. I think we're doing really well, and all kinds of new things coming in. The moral progress, I must admit, I don't see it too much. In fact, I see moral decadence set in terms of the mass media and that. So I'm a little bit of not a pessimist, but I'm not real hopeful that the human condition is not. It's always the same, and we haven't made a lot of progress, I don't think. Although, like with education, I think we have, and trying to tend to the poor a little bit better. So we're trying to work on that. But in terms of the moral progress across the country, I don't see it. I don't see it.
That's kind of sad, isn't it?
It is sad, yeah. I hope I'm not just looking with a bad eye on that either.
Well, no, I think there's plenty of evidence that we have a lot of challenges in front of us. One of the things I was wondering about, too, in terms of just candidates themselves, when you look at a candidate and you try to look at the complexity of the candidate, you try to look at what they've accomplished and what they could conceivably accomplish in the future. Do you think we're really being fair to candidates? It seems to me that we force candidates to change positions. We force candidates to modify positions. We force candidates to become something other than what they started being. And I've noticed this repeatedly in these campaigns, that we're brutal to candidates. And have we created a climate in which candidates really cannot be the true leaders that we want them to be? I mean, have we created an environment in which we force them into this box where they're captive of the polls, not of their own integrity?
Yeah, I think we have. I think the culture is very critical, and the prophet you can criticize, but then you have to have an alternative, and a lot of times we don't give the candidates really alternatives that are really helpful to them. And so I really admire people that go into politics and are really dedicated to the common good and are willing to face the criticism and who try to hang on to their principles even though they're being forced into corners and to change. Those are some that just are very very steadfast. And then too, sometimes as a politician you have to make compromises too. I mean, it's a world in which you just can't. It's part of the game, and you have to be able to bend and to compromise. Hopefully, not on the deeper moral principles.
Right. As you know, at St. Norbert College, we focus a lot on vocation, not just in the religious sense of vocation, but in the broad sense that everyone has a vocation.
Right.
Do you see the political life as a clear vocation for some individuals?
Absolutely.
Would you advise people accordingly?
Absolutely. I think I know Robert Bellebec in his Habits of the Heart said that work can be a job, it can be a career, moving to the ladder, it can be a vocation. And I think the political life is a vocation, a real calling to serve the common good and to foster peace in the world. So I hold those politicians a great admiration. Abraham Lincoln, I just read Team of Rivals. I mean, what a man he was to choose on his cabinet
people who were his political enemies.
And he did that because it was for the good of the country, even though they internally criticized him.
Yes.
Stanton and the others, and he just took that and was true to the course and tried to bring about union in our nation.
That was a pretty brave thing to do.
Brave thing to do.
You would hope that would be a good lesson for the contemporary world.
So it is a vocation. It's a real calling, and for the politician to recognize that they have the gift of leadership and of insight into complex issues, prudential judgment, discernment. That is a real calling.
That'd be another nice section they could add to the document, actually.
That's right.
To encourage people to consider this way of life.
That's a good point. The document would be very much enriched by that.
Just looking at it as politics as a vocation.
Right.
And we might get better leaders, ultimately out of that. And so we're not the first church, for example, to even suggest that, but I think we're one who's late to the to the table.
Right.
And I would hope we would come to the table fully armed next time.
Right.
Would be good. For our viewers, by the way, we're going to put up on the screen some other sources that you can check to get more information about this document, background information that might help you. We certainly hope all of our readers get a chance to read the document online, and that's why we're putting the information up on the screen. So I really want to thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Michael.
Bishop Morneau. It's very good to have you here again.
Thank you.
So again, thank you to our special guest, Bishop Robert Morneau, for sharing his expertise with us this evening. So please join us for future programs as we continue to explore the world of ideas. And until then, I'm Michael Marsden for Conversations from St. Norbert College.